quite pressing across the tech world about sort of the lack of, female leaders in particularly technical functions. I mean, like in Germany, for example, of only 10% of all startups have a female CTO, which is a ridiculously low number. So, I mean, maybe let's start off with Heather. Obviously, you've been involved in technical roles for your whole career. I mean, how do we get more women into these sort of CTO and very highly technical roles? What's the main blocker at the moment, maybe?
Bias is definitely one of them. Like, there's a lot of studies that say that men just get picked over women because women are seen to be softer and not as good as these kind of roles. So we need to overcome the intrinsic bias that we have in our society is the first one. But actually, there's not as many women working in tech. So the thing I always say is actually we need to inspire more girls to get into STEM subjects, full stop. So as an example, I go and talk at schools to girls, particularly about getting into technology or engineering or STEM subjects. So really, we just need to start inspiring our kids that there's no pink and blue jobs, that there are jobs that anyone can do. And a CTO role is just as, a woman/girl is just as able to go up that technical career path as anyone else. We just tend to dissuade our girls from going into STEM subjects. And that's where it needs to start, in my opinion, because there's just not enough women in technical roles to begin with. Interestingly enough, my Toast 91 team is only women. Wow. So I don't know what that says, but yeah, it's definitely possible. You can have highly technical women working in a tech company that's leading edge like mine. So it is definitely possible. Also, just making sure your shortlists include women. I've given up the amount of times where I've had big teams of people, they're hiring and their shortlist doesn't have women in it. If women are not even in the running for it, you're not going to get there. So make sure you challenge whoever is gathering those CVs to actually make sure you have women in the shortlist, because that is actually the single biggest indicator, in my opinion, of you hiring a woman, is obviously giving a woman a chance.
Yeah, no, really interesting points. And that's actually just something we were sort of doing as well, where this idea of sometimes sort of potential over experience, because obviously there are significantly more, male CTOs with a lot of experience, 5, 10, 20, 30 years, whatever it is. And it's also about recognizing maybe the potential of, for example, a head of engineering or a director of engineering who's a woman, and then taking that almost not leap of faith, because that implies that you're making too much of a sort of a risk. But I think in terms of being able to recognize where that talent could then be brought up to that level, I think is something important. Do you have any other sort of thoughts, Payman or Neville, anything about how we can sort of try and encourage this, other than the bigger picture of the whole educational shift, which I agree with, but I think that's a longer term solution as well.
Yeah. So I had once a company who was asking me, like, why is our team not so diverse and what can we do about that? And I told them, like, did you have a look at the management? Did you have a look at the advisory board? Like, they're all white men mainly. So how should that work? Like, because you need this kind of role model. Like, you need people who are on the management side, who are female, who are hiring then a female CTO. I think this is pretty important, and I don't see that very often. Yeah, and with the other things, I can definitely agree. There are sometimes smaller things which we did in the past. For example, the job description, we changed the text and let the text, like we let women write the text to make sure, okay, it attracts also women, and it's nothing what maybe attracts a man, because there are some kind of slight differences about what kind of vocabulary you use and things like this. So there are also on this kind of level smaller things which you can do. Besides that, I totally agree with Heather.
No, I was just going to say I totally agree with Payman and Heather. From my side, I think mostly availability and visibility. I think like I do feel that any potential female CTOs, like, make yourself visible out there, because then like sometimes the world is looking, and I think Josh, you can attest, when we were looking, we were like, hey, if our team is already a little bit more male heavy, so we just want to have like females that come and join our team, and especially if we've got like someone in a powerful position like CTO, then that's awesome. But then unfortunately, like in the region that we were looking for, we were not able to find. And so if you are able to make yourself visible and be daring also to take some of the steps towards startups, because I think like that's also what makes it a little bit tricky. That of course, if you do find an experienced CTO or who is the right fit, but they're at a different stage in their life, and then like the startup turbulences make it very tricky to then go for that decision. And so yeah, I do think that of course it's a big role for then the companies to provide this type of security. But if we can just, if you're out there and you're visible, please make yourself available, because yeah, these chances definitely are there.
I think that's a really good point, actually. It's almost touching on a few themes. So this idea of both education, but also the visibility, and also the way we're actually advertising, the way we're writing them. This idea of, you know, the language that we use in our internal functions, the way we, you know, say things internally, the documents we use. That's also a really important thing. It's something we recognize at Accelerate as well with sort of our inclusive hiring side, just to understand how we can help startups to approach more of these topics without, you know, maybe everything being so male heavy, especially when you come to, you know, the technical side of things. But yeah, some really interesting points there, and I think some really definitely there's a lot of food for thought and a lot of things to dive into further with this one.